105K Jams, hip hop and R&B hits. Hey, y'all, listen, I have a guest in the studio with me today. And, you know, I've actually known her for several years now, and I actually knew her daughter before I met her. She is now an author. She's a principal as well. I admire her from a distance, and I don't think she really even knows that. I've never really expressed that to her, but you know, I see her. I see what she's doing in the community. I see how she works hard. But today, she is actually here to talk to us about a book that she has written about her personal life experience. So a little bit of a disclaimer, aka maybe a little bit of trigger warning, if you will. You know, that's kind of the terms that we use today. But this book may be potentially a heavy topic for some. But my prayer is that you take the time to sit and listen to what Miss Rochelle, a.k.a. Gina Wilson, is here to talk about today. She has written a book titled Free to Scream, and it's a guide for support, empowering victims of abuse and their advocates to discover their voice. Miss Gina, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here today. Tell us why you wrote this book. What is your reason for writing this book?
Wow. I went through some things, and when I got out, or I thought I had gotten out, I decided that I was going to use the experiences that I went through to help someone else. Because the entire time I was going through the experience, I knew how to get out, because that was my job. I was a domestic violence advocate, and I did not do it. And so once I got out, I decided there's a reason I went through this, and I am going to help save somebody's life.
Can you give me just like a brief history of domestic violence? And we're going to be talking about some of the statistics here in Oklahoma as well as Tulsa, if you could help bring awareness to that.
So domestic violence has been going on since the beginning of time. I mean, if we go all the way back to ancient Rome, men were allowed to rebuke, beat, or even kill their wives for certain offenses. The Middle Ages, there was no question about it. When we talk about English common law, husbands were able to chastise their wife with a reasonable instrument, which is interesting. Mm-hmm. Over time, states began to have different laws. In the 1920s, social workers actually suggested that women that were abused were mentally challenged. In the 1940s, there were claims that women didn't leave because they gained pleasure in being abused. 1970s, feminists began to say that women didn't leave because they could not. Their husbands, they needed the support of their husbands. And it wasn't until like 1970s, which is interesting because I was born in 1976, that there were no known social services for victims of domestic violence. And so it wasn't until 1974 that one of the first books was wrote on domestic violence, and it was called, interestingly, Scream Quietly or the Neighbors Will Hear You. Mm. And so we're now in 2024, and we're still dealing with domestic violence. Oklahoma being one of the top 3 states for domestic violence, one of the top states where victims are killed by their abusers. And I just want to say really quick, I may speak about women being abused because that was my experience, but we know abuse goes both ways. So there's men being abused, there's same-sex relationships being abused, and so I just want to make sure that I stamp that.
Well, and I have to say, one of the reasons why I was a little hesitant, actually, to do the interview, because at first I was like, oh boy, that's personal for me too. I didn't go through it to the extent that you did. I've read, I've been able to read at least half of the book and leaf through the rest of it. But I've had some experiences as well. And it's not easy to talk about. And so I can only begin to imagine what it feels like for you. You know, as I'm reading your story, this was years of your life. This is a very long period of time.
Yes.
And so what I wanted to talk to you about is kind of that process of what did it? You know, what did it for you? What was the day that you just, I can't do this anymore? What did it? What was that moment?
Okay, so let me say first, I had left several times before the final time. Mm. And I think that's one of the key things about the book is understanding that if you leave and you're not ready, more than likely you're going to turn around and go back because you didn't prepare. But the final straw for me was looking out the corner of my eye and seeing my daughter, who at the time was 4, I believe, seeing her see this happen and having to lie to her about the reason why, and feeling almost like a hypocrite because I was a domestic violence advocate at the time. I was helping people get out of abusive relationships, yet I was going home to one every single day. And that was the final straw for me. It was, is this what I want my child to see over and over?
Right. Whew. Yeah, I'm a mother too. So I have to say that was a part of it for me as well. If you don't mind, can I read? This is basically a paragraph from one of your chapters, and it just kind of, it hit me in my feels. But the name of the chapter is Pain on Paper, and this is the first chapter here. It says, to help others who are in abusive relationships, I decided to put my pain on paper. One would think I would be a professional at doing this because I was granted 6 orders of protection over 7 years. That's a lot.
Every year.
I initially thought that when all of this was over, if he didn't kill me, I would write a book about my experiences, tell my stories, and move on. I find that is not the case. When I would try to write, it would hurt to remember everything I've been through. The wounds that I thought were healed would open back up, and I realized I was still not over it. It was still very much impacting me. I began to ask myself, how do I get over almost 13 years of abuse, 8 years of court battles, 6 orders of protection, my children being kidnapped, countless death threats, and years of hiding? Can I ever get over this? Can I ever really heal? Will this ever be over? The answer is, I really don't know. That's why I wanted to ask you, how did you pick up from there? And also the realizing that, I may not be fully healed yet. Did you end up going to any kind of mental health therapy at all at one point? If you don't mind me asking?
I did. Actually, my therapist who wrote my foreword was actually my therapist. So she wrote the foreword for the book for me after seeing some of my growth. And I will just say that I don't know that I would have had to go through 6 orders of protection if I would have learned how to tell my story the correct way. I had to keep going back, and I finally got the permanent order of protection, which is when I uprooted and I left and I was able to start over. But because I didn't effectively, in my opinion, because I didn't effectively communicate the abuse that was happening to me, I had to keep going back.
Yeah, it took time. It took time to figure it out. Well, and I'm grateful that you were able to push through that and work through it, but not everyone's story is the same. And so one of the things I wanted to do, we were talking about different chapter highlights, if we will. One of the questions, how does power and control play into domestic violence? Speak to that a little bit, if you will.
So just keeping in mind that abuse is all about power and control. When equality is absent in a relationship, it's because it's based on power and control. So abusive behaviors step into a relationship when one person tries to feel or feels that they should have power over the other. Emotional abuse, verbal abuse are just as damning as physical and sexual abuse. I was caught up in the cycle before I realized it, and I had to accept, or I felt I had to accept, that this was a normal part of my relationship. And I think it's interesting, there's a part in the book that I talk about the first time he put his hands on me. I think it's interesting that I consider that the first time there was abuse. There was abuse way before that.
Right. It starts in other ways.
Absolutely.
Right, with words of manipulation.
Yeah. A lot of times we think it's cute. We think it's cute when we first meet a guy and he has our phone number or whatever, and he's like, where you at? And he's always like, where you at? Or he popping up, and you're like, oh, no, it's not cute.
It's really not.
It's really not cute.
Yeah, well, it gives stalker a little bit sometimes too, yeah. I wanted to talk to you about safety planning. And one thing that I did want to mention too is Gina has partnered with DWRWAS, Domestic Violence Intervention Services. So we're definitely going to be providing some information for them. So if you're in a situation that you may need some assistance or need to reach out for some support, please make sure you visit the website at dvis.org. That's DVIS.org. But we'll be giving some more information about DWRWAS here in just a bit. But I definitely wanted to talk to Gina about safety planning and how that plan of action came about.
Yes, so safety planning is basically a set of actions that you're going to take if you stay with your abuser while you're preparing to leave. So you're preparing to leave, you got to get a safety plan together. The reason you need a safety plan is because it actually helps reduce the chances of a huge fight when you leave, which could, of course, cause real harm to you. So with safety planning, we just kind of teach, and I won't give all the tools here, but we just kind of teach, you need to write down a plan. You need to have, if you have a friend, if you have a family member, keep a bag there. You need to have Social Security card numbers. You need to have birth certificates if you have children that you're with. A lot of times we watch the Tina Turner movie. Mm-hmm. And we see that he sleep on the couch and she just runs to the other hotel and she never goes back. Mm-hmm. That is not the norm. The norm is we leave like that, but we have left so many items that we don't plan and we have to return. So your safety plan is helping you save money if your partner is the one that controls the money, so that you have everything you need and you don't have to return back to the place that you're being abused. And I think in this time and age, we have to remember technology with safety planning, because social media is huge in tracking people. And so we just have to be careful on those phones, posting. A lot of us have accepted friends. We really don't know who they are.
Yep.
So you don't know if that is your abuser's friend or someone watching you. Safety planning is the most important piece when you have decided, I got to get out of here, I'm just not ready.
Well, I'm really big on, I don't check in anymore. Or like, you're going to see where I went.
Right.
Not where I'm
posting after I'm gone.
Right.
That's exactly.
Unless I'm at a work event, something like that. That's a little different. So why is it important for us to raise awareness about domestic violence?
Because it hasn't gone away. It hasn't stopped. And I think what hurts my heart is that we are still in the top 3 when it comes to domestic violence. Yet, we don't talk about it. We don't bring awareness about it until something major happens, and then we talk about it for a week or two. And so even with this being Domestic Violence Awareness Month, I'm Googling. If you Google Domestic Violence Awareness Month, you don't see a lot of events. It's not a happy topic to talk about. And that's something I say about this book. This is not a book that is a happy book, but is a book that you will be happy if you need it or if your family members need it. So bringing awareness lets people know this is what's going on. This is the support I can get if I'm going through this or a family member is going through this. But I think it also puts some responsibility and spotlight on abusers.
Yeah.
And I think that's why we need to have more awareness about it. There's some people abusing that don't even know that's abuse. That's the way they grew up, and they think that's the way you're supposed to talk to your spouse or your partner. Right. And so I just think working in a high school, I am seeing more and more cases where people are dating younger and younger, and they don't have the skills for dating. They don't understand what abuse is, and you're seeing really, really micro levels that if not addressed or awareness isn't brought up, it's going to turn into something else.
Right. Speaking of DWRWAS, again, where can victims go for the help they need with domestic violence intervention services? And how can we support you to help raise awareness for DV?
Absolutely. So with DWRWAS, they have a 24-hour crisis line. That number is 918-743-5763. They take crisis walk-ins 9 to 5, Monday through Friday. They have an emergency shelter. They have free individual and group therapy for survivors or any kind of abuse or assault in their lifetime. They also offer therapy for children of any age. There's also another agency that I am partnering with, and that's Improving Lives Counseling. And both of these organizations also work with men. A lot of time we think domestic violence and we think women. So if there's men listening to this, men are abused also and can use these resources. And Improving Lives Counseling, that number is 918-268-7365.
Again, that number for DWRWAS is 918-743-5763. And for Improving Lives, it's 918-268-7365. For the website for DWRWAS, too, again, DWRWAS.org. Make sure you visit the website. And, if you're having any kind of situation where you just need someone to talk to and you need some support, make sure you call them. The support is there for you, and they can help you to put together a safety plan as well.
Absolutely. And how you can support the efforts for Domestic Violence Awareness Month with me. Of course, I have the book Free to Scream. It is available on Amazon. It is also available in English and Spanish. We have had a high rise of domestic violence with our Hispanic population, so making sure that those resources are out there for them. Share it. Just know that a lot of the proceeds, the majority of the proceeds, are going towards domestic violence agencies for the month of October with the purchase of the book. And then also on October 21st from 6 to 7:30, there'll be an event at Fulton Street Bookstore that we'll be talking with survivors, celebrating survivors, giving resources out, and I'll be there also with my book, Free to Scream.
Okay, great. And that's on a Monday, correct?
That is on a Monday night. So come have some cookies, maybe some cupcakes, some cocktails, and some conversation. And we're going to talk about how we support each other. Mm-hmm. You know, it's an embarrassing thing to go through, and there's a lot of people that don't talk about it because they are embarrassed. I mean, I was a professional making really good money in St. Louis, Missouri when this happened, and it was embarrassing to tell anybody that this was going on, but that's one of the reasons why people stay. They're embarrassed to talk about it.
Yeah. Well, Rochelle, because that's what I do know you as.
That's fine.
Rochelle.
Well, you know the story behind that?
To it. Yeah, I actually wanted you to share that with our listeners because a minute ago when we were talking, I started to say Rochelle and Gina at the same time. I said Regina. And I was like, why did I do that? You know, you do it sometimes. But yeah, tell us why, the name.
Okay, so as you heard, I went through several years of abuse, several years of court battles. I was in a situation where the courts, and the courts do this, and I do understand why, although sometimes I don't agree with it. The courts decided, yes, this person is abusive to you, but you haven't really proven that this person is abusive to the children. So, no, this person can't be around you, but you have to give your kids to this person every other weekend, which there was always an issue. And so there were things that happened, and I talk about it in the book, where finally the courts were like, oh, okay, this is really going on. She is not just going through a divorce and trying to get the kids. And so I was granted full custody of the children, and it was at that point I was granted the permanent order of protection, which means I don't have to keep going back every year to get it. And my attorney looked at me at that point. You have to understand I had no family in St. Louis, Missouri. My family was here and other places, but I was stuck there in this system. And my attorney looked at me and he said, what's your plans? And I said, I'm going to go closer to my mom. I'm going to go closer to my family. And he said, well, we've seen this for 6 years. We had 6 or 7 years now. And so we made a safety plan. And that safety plan was when I moved, I was going to change my name. And I was going to just start a new life with a different name. Mm-hmm. And so when I moved to Tulsa, Oklahoma, I picked Gina because my mother's name is Regina.
Okay.
So I picked Gina, and I'm just thankful that the jobs that I had, I was able to go in and explain, this is my legal name, but this is what I need to go by, and here's why. Yes. And so everyone in Tulsa knows me as Gina, and that's what I go by, and that's fine. But then I wrote this book and I decided, you know what? I am not in hiding anymore. Mm-hmm. My kids are 22 and 20 years old. I am going to stand up and be a bold advocate, and I'm going to put my real name on this book. Yeah. And so that's where Gina comes from. And so now that everybody in Tulsa knows me by Gina, I just go by it because it's too much to explain. But you can call me Rochelle. You know me as Rochelle.
Yes, I do. Well, and I just personally wanted to say thank you for sharing your story. You are actually inspiring me in ways that you don't even know. And I'm just going to leave it there. But I really believe that when we tell our own stories and things that we've experienced in life, there's someone out there that's listening right now that says, I can relate. And you know what? Today might be their day. Today may be the day that they leave. And all because you shared your story. So, Rochelle, thank you.
Thank you. I do want to say that sometimes it's not a one and done. You have to work on yourself, and that's where therapy comes in. Because even after getting out of that relationship and breaking away and getting free and going to another state and changing my name, I met some people and got involved in something else. And you would think I would know the warning signs. And so you have to continue to work on yourself, because you have to ask yourself, what is it in me that is attracting this type of person? Mm-hmm. And so there were several years that I blamed myself for the abuse, because I'm very outspoken. Anybody that knows me know I'm going to say what I need to say. And is that why I keep getting smacked upside the head? And so I had to really do a lot of work when I started dating other people and I started having similar situations. And so I am at a point now, the first time you show me, I'm out. There's no working with you. I'm not going to counseling with you. I'm going to do an order of protection if you put your hands on me, because I know exactly how to get one. And I'm going to move on with my life. And I think one of the key things I want to say is, if you met somebody in the parking lot for the first time and they slapped you, or they walked up to you and they called you fat, or they called you ugly, or they spit on you, you would know exactly what to do. You would report with confidence. You would follow through with the police. You would be at the court hearings. And I think it's interesting that the person that we're intimate with, the person we say we love and we live with, are doing those things, and we get lost in what to do.
Yeah, because our feelings are attached, and
Absolutely.
formed that bond with them.
Can I say one thing about the feelings? I think that's a big part of the book, is there's a way to advocate. We think just because we're talking or we say something that we're advocating for ourselves. The problem is when we are in our emotions, and I believe in your emotions, and you need to feel your emotions and accept them. But when you speak from emotions, I need people to understand that police and courts don't deal with emotions. They deal with facts. And so when you're in your emotions, you start exaggerating. You start saying stuff like never and always, or you start adding in facts or that don't really matter. She cheated, he cheated. That doesn't matter. Why did he put his hands on you? Why did she smack you? And so a big part of the book is trying to teach people how to separate the emotion from the facts of what happened, so you can get the help that you need.
Right. And again, if you need some support, make sure you reach out to DWIS at dvis.org, or call the number 918-743-5763. Make sure that you check out on Amazon Free to Scream. That's the number 2, Free to Scream, a guide for support empowering victims of abuse and their advocates to discover their voice, written by Ms. Rochelle Gina Wilson. Lady, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate you.
Thank you for telling your story, and I commend you on your bravery, and I support you, and I will continue praying for you and everyone else that's involved in any kind of situation that they need to remove themselves from. So please get the help and the support that you need today. All right, we're going to get back into the music here in a little bit. This is the Weekend Rewind with Ali Shaw.